So Mrs. Lepori, so what are some of your earliest Puremont memories?
Well, some of my earliest Puremont memories were with my grandmother, who lived on Puremont Avenue. And
behind the silk mill.
yeah, behind the silk mill. And I used to go there all the time because I came from a big family and she needed help and I was the second girl on, so I was able to go there and help her out a lot. So that was, and the memories I have were like parades and going in front of the house from the Santa Cosma Damiano group and the Sons of Italy. And my grandfather was involved in those. And also when I was with my grandmother at one time, she was really very upset and crying. And I said, and she only spoke Italian. So I said, what's the matter, Grandma? And she said, look, she said, they're burning crosses. So across the way from her house, they were burnt. Huh?
On the hill by the cowboy.
Yeah, on the hill by the cowboy field, they were burning crosses. And she was so upset. So that's one of my earliest memories in Puremont. I was not a Puremont girl. I was mainly Spark Hill because I lived in the mine hole and went to Spark Hill School. So really most of my memory is in Spark Hill. Though like the closest I ever had of Puremont was with my grandmother, who wanted to go in the Hudson River every day to take a kind of a bath, she would call it. And I would walk her down. She was old, and I would walk her down, and she would go behind the Mizuki property, and she'd pack a lunch for me and her, and we'd go behind the Mizuki property, and she would take her bath. And that's about my earliest memory.
But you moved to Puremont when you were 15.
Huh?
You moved to Puremont when you were 15.
Yeah, when I was 15, then we moved to Puremont where I'm living now.
So at 15, did you change schools? Did you
No, actually, I was 15 years old when I moved here.
Mhm.
So I was ready to go to high school. So then I went to Puremont High School. But I didn't graduate, but I went to Puremont High School. And then after that, I went to work.
so where did you go to work?
I worked at a bakery in Nyack. I took the bus back and forth. I worked at Robert Gare for a very, very short time because it was really hard. Yeah, and also I babysat for Dr. Knight in Puremont. He was the Puremont doctor. And I also did some house cleaning for see, who's that? There's some actor and his wife.
Belliver.
Huh?
Belliver.
And tap me in.
Belliver.
Belliver, yeah, the name is Belliver, right? So that's where I worked. And also I took, after a while, because it was hard to really get a good job at that time. So I took a living job in Garnerville and I lived with a pastor and his wife and babysat there. And I cooked and I cleaned, I did all kinds of things. And then their house had a big fire. So then I came back home. And then it wasn't too long after that I met my husband. I was 19 and he was ready to go to war. And so we got married and then I've kind of been a stay-at-home mom since.
Did he ship out from Camp Shanks?
No, he shipped out from Long Island somewhere. And he went to, let's see, he first went to Atlantic City. And then he went to the China, Burma, India. And he was gone for almost 3 years. So let's see, what else do I remember about Puremont.
You said, Robert, you worked at the factory and that it was
I
very,
did. I worked at the factory.
but what made it so tough? You said it was a tough job. What made it so
Oh,
tough?
it was the egg safety, and it was just hard work. I mean, you know, my hands were hurt because those boxes came and you had to grab them and put them in a box, and you know, it was real not kind of work that I really enjoyed. So I didn't stay with Robert here.
So then you raised your family in Puremont?
I did raise my family in Puremont.
Where'd you live?
I lived right here. So
Oh.
where after my family moved into this house in 1938 because our house burned, the mine hole house burned. There was a young man who was smoking next door, and those houses are real close. And he died at that time, but our house burned, and then we moved into my grandmother's house for a short time. And then my dad, who was a gardener for Mrs. Mocan. And so she had this house that was empty for 9 years, and we moved into this house, and we've been here ever since.
So what are some of the so you've been through a lot of storms, you've been through a lot of big events in Puremont. What are some of the things that stand out? What are some of the memories?
Well, what stands out is like the feasts from the Italian feasts that they had every year, because they had the Sons of Italy that had this big feast, and then they had this other feast that was the two saints, Santa Cosma and Damiano. There was a church that was built in the mine hole called the Church of Santa Cosma and Damiano. And then all the members would like parade up and down the street, and they bring the saints through the street, and people would pin on money on the saints. And then they would have this big feast in Puremont that we loved, because the Italians would come with their trucks and the games, a lot of games, and a lot of food. Yeah. So that was the big event, those two big feasts. And of course, it was always a carnival with the firemen. But that was, and also there was a barge downtown when I was young, and it was on the Pisco property in the water, and he turned it into a roller skating rink. And so we would go there, and for 50 cents, we could roller skate and rent the roller skates. It was really fun. And then also at the Fort Comfort, there was a great big platform with a jukebox, and we would go down there and dance. And that's about all we ever did, because there were no movies, and we never had a car. That was what Puremont was at that time.
What were some of the stores that you remember?
The stores that I remember were the drugstore, the bakery, a diner right by the Gare property, at the end of the Gare property. There was that diner. Hogan's, yeah, it was Hogan's Diner. Yeah. And there was a little seafood house that was done by Joe Mizuki. He had a little seafood house and he would sell shrimp and other things. And of course there was, I can't think of the name of that big store that really.
Community market?
No, not the community market, where I can't think of the name of the store, but where the Mark worked.
Community market.
Is that the community market? Okay. So that was run by a family that delivered food. And that's about the only stores I remember. There was a butcher right on the corner by the railroad tracks, Myers Butcher Shop. Yeah. And also there was I can't remember the name either of that, but there was a meat store that we were able to get the meat that we wanted. And there was also a grocery store that was run by Lightner in town.
So do you remember when they started building the Tappan Zee Bridge? Did that change anything at all in Puremont?
Oh, well, I don't remember that it changed anything, but I do remember when they started to build it. And Chip, my son, was in school. All my kids were in school, actually. But Chip, his class walked over the Tappan Zee Bridge at the day they opened it, yeah. His class.
So the festivals, the Sons of Italy festivals, were they affiliated with the church? So how big was the?
No, the Sons of Italy they were just an Italian group that got together, and they met once, I think once a month, and they also had a women's group that met, and the women had parties and got together, you know, had dinners down at the Pisco's, where on the barge. And, but the Italian festival was the other one, the Two Saints.
And which church did your family worship at?
We were Catholics, and my mother really never pushed us to go to church. We were baptized and made our first communion. Not all of them, but the older ones made the first communion. My grandmother was very, very religious, and we didn't go to church. But after we moved here, we started to go to the Dutch Reformed Church down the street. And so that's where we all went. All the kids went there. We sang in the choirs. We went to, you know, what they call Christian Endeavor, when you met every Sunday night with other young people. And they did trips sometimes. And then later on, of course, after my husband came home, and I had this little boy, Chip, and we decided we were going to find a church. So we started to go to Simpson Memorial in Nyack. And basically, that's where we brought our family up, at Simpson Memorial Church.
You mentioned the mine hole earlier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about the mine hole.
Well, the mine hole, of course, was predominantly Black and Italian. And the Black people were wonderful. I have to say that I never felt any safer. My mother could send me to the store, which is right in Puremont here, by Varieties there. And so long as they were on the street, these Black people were on the street, I felt secure. I mean, it was just a real nice place. And my best girlfriends were the Black girls who do each other's hair. And I lived there till I was 15 years old. So it was like a few Italian families, and then predominantly Black and Italians that lived there. And they called it the mine hole. You know why they call it the mine hole, don't you?
Well, you tell me. I've heard.
Okay, because there was a mine there, and that's where we would go and get water. So it was always called the mine hole. It was Puremont Avenue, but everybody called it the mine hole because of that mine that was there. And we would always go get water there. And above the mine hole, there was a poem that said, "O traveler, stay thy weary seat. Drink of this fountain cool and sweet. It flows for man and beast the same. Go thy way, remembering still the well beneath the hill." So, and there was always a bench there, and the people that lived there would plant flowers, and it always looked beautiful. It doesn't look beautiful now, but it was really a beautiful spot in the mine hole.
The poem is still there though, right?
So I don't know.
They put a new one up.
Oh, they did? Oh, I don't know if it's still there.
I think it might be. So, and you said that the burning crosses was an early memory. Did you later find
early
out what
memory.
that was? Did you later find out what that was
Oh, yeah,
about?
I did later find out what it was all about. I didn't know then. I mean, all I could say that remember is that in Italian, she would say, look, they're burning crosses, they're burning crosses. And she was crying. I didn't know why they were burning. I did find out later on that they were against, but Mark tells me they were against Catholics. Did you say?
Blacks and Catholics.
Yeah,
Yep.
Mark tells me they
Yep.
were against blacks and Catholics.
That's true. That's true. So,
Yeah.
when your husband came back, what kind of work did he do?
My husband was in the auto parts, and he was doing that before he went in, and then he stayed there until he was actually 83 years old. He worked
Oh, that's wonderful.
for Nike Auto Parts,
That's wonderful.
and then later on he went. Well, he managed a store and worked in Haverstraw, and later on he worked for another company just part-time after he retired.
What's his name?
Gaspar Lepori, but
Uh,
we called him Cappy. His nickname was Cappy.
That's wonderful.
And he was very, very, very well loved by everybody who knew him. And when he died, we had the service down at the Dutch Reformed Church, and the Dutch Reformed Church could not even accommodate all the people that came. And it was over Easter holiday. So, I mean, it only went in the paper one day, but because he was in the auto parts business and sold auto parts, he knew so many people, and everybody he knew just loved him.
Were they ever on Main Street in Nyack?
What?
Did they have their office on Main Street in Nyack at any point?
They had their shop, their auto parts in Nyack on Main Street.
Yeah, I used to go there with my father. I probably met him.
Well, you probably ran into Cap if it was the right shop.
Yeah, wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, Nyack. It was Miller's.
It probably was Tavister though.
Yeah, probably was
So tomorrow I'm talking to Connie.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to interview her as well.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to share or like to tell me?
I think that's about all I remember, really. I remember my mom and grandma telling stories about different people in Puremont, but I really didn't know them.
Hmm. What was your grandmother's name?
Nicolina Olato.
Was she born in the U.S. or was she born in Italy?
No. No, she was born in Italy, and so were my parents. My parents were born in Italy.
Oh, when did they come over?
My mother came over when she was 8 years old. My dad came over when he was 15 years old. And it's because they were so poor in Italy. This is my dad. They were so poor in Italy that they sent his son here to work, their oldest son. And then when my dad became 15, they sent him over. And so my dad came here to work, and they worked on the railroads. And so when his big brother went back, my dad wouldn't go back because he said he had a terrible time coming over here and he just wanted to stay. So he stayed, and he was the only one of his family that came to America and raised a family in America. My mom was an only child. So we never had any aunts and no uncles, no cousins. We were just like a family. We were just grandparents. So, but one of the biggest thrills of my life was that I was able to go to Italy and meet my dad's family. He only had a brother left and lots of cousins of mine. But that was one of the big events of my life.
Which part of Italy?
It was in the Naples area, but it was the province of Benevento. Right, Mark?
Benevento, yeah.
Benevento.
Are you fluent in Italian?
Do I what?
Are you fluent? Do you speak Italian fluently?
I speak Italian, but I speak dialect because that's my grandma was born in Naples, and she came here and she never learned to speak English. So I was forced to speak Italian because that was the only way we could communicate. But Mark is very fluent in Italian.
Oh, wow. And so you said your grandfather worked for the railroad, or was it your father?
No, my
Your
dad.
father.
No,
Your father.
yeah, my dad.
Which railroad?
Well, I guess this railroad's right here. You know, they gave what they called him Water Boy because evidently he was bringing water to the workers or something when they were putting in the railroads. I don't know much about that, but I do know that they called him Water Boy. And but then after he worked at Robert Care for years and years and years.
Do you know what he did at Robert Gere?
He was an oiler.
A boiler?
Yeah.
Fixing the
oil-
boilers.
He was illiterate, so he never went to school. So he was an oiler. He worked nights all the time.
Oh.
And then he was a gardener for rich people. He was a fantastic gardener. He was unbelievable. And he worked for a lady
Spears.
called Mrs. Spear in Spark Hill. And then later he worked for who he called Madame Mocan, who lived up here in Rockland Road. Her children still live there, and he gardened there. And so he worked. He would come home from work in the morning, and then he'd go work doing gardening. Then he'd come home, go to bed, go to work at 11 o'clock, and then home at 7. And that was his life. He never drove. He never did much of anything other than work and raise 8 kids.
Take care of his family, yeah. Wow.
Pardon me?
That's a full life.
It is a full life,
Uh-huh.
but he was a wonderful dad.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, so if there's anything else you can this is wonderful, the memories you've shared.
It's not much about Puremont. I mean, but
A little bit. It's
yeah,
enough. I mean, it's the people who've lived near and come through Puremont, and you put all the pieces together and you get a full picture of Puremont from everyone's little snapshot. But I do appreciate you spending time with me tonight. So
it's nice.
well, thank you. And and then you and Connie will both have your recording, so you guys can compare notes. You can listen to each other's.
Oh, I know, but she likes to go over things and write them down and all. So I know she'll have a big list of stuff that she remembers.
Oh, it'll be wonderful to have them side by side. It was very, very wonderful. I know that Mark and I have been exchanging notes for a couple of months now. So Mark, thank you very much for making this happen.
Okay.
I really appreciate it. And at some point too, we're gonna hope to have a transcript of the of the interview as well, so you can have that for the family, stick it in a family album. And
Okay, thank you.
it was good
Thank you.
good for the grandkids. So I thank you so much. So I'm gonna stop recording. And right there, stop recording.